Hey guys, it's Robert Weinberg here, and I'm with Dave McDuff. And Dave is a realtor as well as a broker associate with one of the top real estate agencies in the area, Westview Properties. So, Dave, appreciate you taking the time to join me here today.
Rob, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. So, what we really wanted to talk about here today to all of our viewers and our listeners all over is the competitive nature of the real estate market right now as we round out the 2020 year and getting your offer accepted. As a home buyer in this market, there's been a lot of frustration that people have been having recently because the market is so hot. And especially locally here in Connecticut, we haven't seen this type of market in decades. So people are a little bit caught off guard. And there's a few different factors that are lending itself to that, which we'll talk about during the conversation here today. But really what we want to focus on is what you can do as a buyer, the different steps and the different strategies and techniques that you can use and that you can take in order to get your offer accepted. So I think the first point that I want to really spend a little bit of time on with you, Dave, is talking about strategizing with your real estate agent and strategizing with your loan officer as early as possible in the process. So can you just give us a little bit of information on that,
Rob.
why it's so important?
Exactly. And I 100% agree with you. Just to get back to you, the situation which has been going on with COVID, there's been limited listings. The interest rates have been so good, and it's leading to a buying frenzy. So what's happening is in many of the cases, people are missing out on multiple bid situations. So it's, to me as a realtor, the most important thing is to have that clear line of communication between buyer, mortgage officer, and realtor, just to know that we're on the same page. And we can go into it a little bit more, but it's not an exact science, but it's doing all the little things right. When you do all those little things right that we will talk about during this podcast, you end up having a greater chance of getting the sale and getting your dream home.
Absolutely. So one of the things that before we went on the air here that me and Dave were discussing is, talking about your maximum price point, because unlike other times in the real estate industry, right now, you're probably going to be pushing your limits when it comes to the price point that you're looking for or that you're looking at. So it's important to communicate with your realtor upfront and your loan officer, as well as we'll be talking about here in the next point, on what is your max price point. What is your maximum monthly payment, all in with property taxes, home insurance, everything, and where is that in the grand scheme of your financial plan? So can you talk about, Dave, how having someone's maximum monthly payment, let's say, or maximum price point, can really help you as their advisor with the real estate and finding them the right homes to be able to look at without breaking the bank?
Okay, exactly. I guess I would start by saying you have to know your numbers. That's where you come in. That's where that's where that communication goes in. So often my buyers will say, all right, so my max is 200,000, 225,000, but they don't really know their numbers. What I ask them to do is equate that to a monthly payment that you are comfortable with. As you know, different towns have different taxes, insurance, et cetera, et cetera. People seem to be quite pleased that they realize they basically have more buying power than they thought because of the interest rates, because of the say lower tax base in certain towns, and they're pleasantly pleased.
Absolutely. So I think one of the most important things here that we want to reiterate, and I know I've talked about in a lot of my other video lessons, a lot of my other podcasts with other guests, is to get with your mortgage lender as early as possible in the process. There's nothing wrong with speaking with a mortgage advisor 6 months before you're ready to buy a home. Okay, that's actually recommended. I've had clients that will come to me a year or even a couple years ahead just to say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a home. Here's what I have saved so far. Here's my monthly budget. Here's where I'm at with my credit. And we can put a game plan together on how much more money do you need to save? How much or what more can you do with your credit to get you to an optimal level so that you can get the best terms on the loan that you're going to get? And then with the monthly payment, there are different loan programs that are available. FHA, VA, USDA, conventional. These all have different credit score requirements. They all have different down payment requirements. It's not easy. I would actually go as far as saying most of the time it's impossible to get you from, say, a 640 score to a 700 score in a 30-day window. Okay, those type of changes to your credit profile and to your finances can take several months. There's nothing wrong with having a great credit score 3 or 6 months before you need to use it on a mortgage. What you don't want to have is a situation where your credit doesn't qualify you for the loan that you want and you're scrambling and you're trying to put everything together in a 30 or 60-day period. So that brings me really to my second point that I wanted to discuss here with Dave, which is, discussing different loan programs. And I want to concentrate just for a minute on the mortgage part of the process here and the loan part of the process. So looking at, like I said, conventional versus FHA, you may qualify for a $200,000 home on a conventional loan, but you may also qualify for $230,000 on an FHA loan. FHA tends to be a little bit more liberal, a little bit more flexible with debt to income. It also is a little bit more flexible when it comes to credit score requirements. So this is where that trusted mortgage advisor is going to come in, is not just pre-approving you for a conventional mortgage and saying, have a good day, but looking at multiple options for you and saying, okay, well, you're up to this, you're up to this point, X amount of dollars on this loan, and you could go and stretch it maybe another 20 or 30,000 on this other loan program, and then looping in the realtor on that. So talking about, realtor communication, like Dave had been alluding to. And then the other piece of this puzzle is the reputation of the lender. There's a lot of national lenders out there now because of technology. There's lenders out there, and I'll name names. I'm talking about Quicken Loans. I'm talking about Rocket Mortgage. I'm talking about Loan Depot. I'm talking about a lot of these big box lenders that are out there with millions and tens of millions of dollars in advertising. You're seeing it on TV. You're seeing it on billboards. You're seeing it on or hearing it on the radio and all over the internet. Somebody's paying for that. Okay. I'm not here to talk about who's more expensive now, but those ads aren't free. And then reputation. Unfortunately, as Dave can talk about, the reputation of some of these national lenders like that, if there's two offers, one's from a trusted local mortgage advisor that's been doing this for a decade plus, and the other's from an online lender, what do you think is going to hold up better? So can you talk a little bit about reputation and the loan part, the mortgage part, the loan officer, and how that plays in with getting an offer accepted in this market?
Sure, you are 100% right. And just to back up again in the process, I just wanted to add, because you brought up a very good point with starting out early, getting to know your credit score, getting to know what you qualify for. Also, while doing this, the realtor's job, what we should do is be putting our buyers up on automatic listings. Get them used to what do you want, so they can know specifically what they want. What's their price range? Have them start driving around, looking at the area, seeing what they like. So it gets the process going. So now you're pre-qualified, and the lender has a huge role in this. And I think the thing, especially with you guys, it's accountability. So those different places that you mentioned, if you have to call the loan officer with a problem or with a question, you might get a different person every time. It's tough. And then when there's a problem, nobody's around. Well, can't do it. It's an underwriting, et cetera, et cetera. And you don't know how often that happens. So to me and to the buyer, the biggest thing is that reputation. And I'm going to back up a second too, is when I'm on the selling side and I am listing a house, that makes a difference when I discuss multiple offers with the seller of mine. I'm going to tell them, all things being equal, you want to deal with somebody that's trusted because you have more control over the situation. I will add one more thing, and I apologize. So you tell me, but anyway, you brought up another good point here too, is you may be able to qualify for a little bit more with an FHA loan than, say, a conventional loan. So in a situation with that, if the house is in really, really good shape, you might want to go with that FHA, because it's going to give you more buying power, and that may be the difference of you getting the house of your dreams or you not getting the house of your dreams. But lastly, to add, reputation is very, very important, and it's also important on the real estate side. People, all us realtors, even though we work for different agencies, we know each other. And we know the realtors that maybe don't have as good of a reputation, or that don't give feedback back to on your particular listings. Everybody's a little bit different, and reputation is huge. So 100% agree with you there, Rob.
Yeah, and I think for those viewers and listeners here, if this is sounding foreign to you and you went to your lender and they just gave you a sheet of paper with a pre-qualification or pre-approval, they didn't talk to you about the different loan options, they didn't talk to you about your affordability and really spend the time, I think that you may want to look and talk to more than one lender.
I've had instances where I've actually spoken to my buyer. They've gotten pre-qualified, as you have said, and they don't know what closing costs are. I have to explain to them what closing costs are, and they're just not being educated.
And a big part of this home buying process is all about education. Even if you may have bought a home years ago, decades ago, and you're buying another now, the process has changed quite a bit. Okay. There's technology now that's being used that wasn't before. The market has changed quite a bit. So everybody needs to be educated, especially a first-time home buyer that hasn't done this before. It's not just a monthly payment and an interest rate and a house. That's not all. That's the tip of the iceberg. Like Dave said, you need to know your total amount that you're going to need for closing costs, down payment, prepaid escrow accounts, everything out the door. You need to know what that amount is going to be so that you're comfortable with it. If your lender's not talking to you about that, then again, it may be time to either A, ask questions and get answers, or B, seek out somebody else. Seek out a local trusted advisor that has a good reputation, because they should be handling all this with you. They should be giving this information to you without you even having to ask, because it's so integral as part of the process. Last point I want to make before we move on to the next bullet here is getting a full pre-approval, not just a pre-qualification. A lot of the online lenders and a lot of the local banks even that are spitting out pre-approvals like an assembly line, they're just getting your credit report, getting some self-reported info on how much do you have in the bank, how much do you make at your job, and then they're spitting out a pre-qualification letter based on that. And that's really dangerous for a couple reasons. But I guess the moral of this whole thing is, if your lender is giving you a pre-qualification letter and they're not looking at what are your pay stubs, how much do you actually make at your job, not what do you tell me your salary is, what does your pay stub say? What does your W-2 say? What is your employment history, not only right now, but for the last couple of years, which can dictate which loan program you qualify for? How much money do you have in the bank, like checking savings? And how much money do you have in retirement, 401ks, IRAs, all those sort of things, okay? So all of this is gonna be very, very important for you to understand and for you to know and discuss ahead of time by them getting the documents, the bank statements, by them getting the actual pay stubs, W-2s, all the stuff we're talking about. They're going to be able to not just give you a pre-qualification that's as good and it's only worth the sheet of paper it's written on, but give you a full pre-approval. And in certain circumstances, if you have a very complicated scenario, then we can even go as far as doing what's called a TBD underwriting, which is where an underwriter will actually review your entire loan top to bottom before you even go under contract to make sure that we can get your loan approved. Now, that's not as common now because of the volume, but it is reserved for a complicated case where maybe your credit's on the lower end, or you've had previous issues with a short sale or foreclosure in the past. Maybe your income is questionable because you're on commissions, or maybe it's variable where you work different hours every week. These are all the things that are why it's so important and allow us, once your offer gets accepted, so you can move forward full speed ahead. Otherwise, you run the risk of your offer either not getting accepted at all, or halfway into the process having a problem with underwriting. We'd rather know that up front. It just makes it so much less stressful for everyone. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, 100%, Rob. As a matter of fact, just to piggyback on that, is at the beginning of the program, we talked about everybody doing the little things right. All those little things add up to success in a home buying process. Now, if again, as I told you before, I represent both buyers and I represent sellers. So if I'm going to get a full pre-qualification, a pre-approval from you, and I'm going to get a pre-qualification, say from a Quicken Loans, all things being the same, or maybe even being slightly different but close, they're going to pick the pre-approval 100% of the time, because again, it just offers more security. And then getting to another small thing, by doing that pre-approval, I, as the realtor, am able to close up my dates a little bit more. And, we could maybe say close in 5 weeks, and that gives us the advantage over somebody that needs 8 weeks to close.
Absolutely, I agree with you. So that really is a good segue over to our next point here, which is talking about specifically on the real estate side, the realtor side, your real estate advisor, which is going to be your buyer's agent. And this also really, I think, applies to selling your home and a seller's agent as well. So because real estate's so hot right now, there's so much opportunity. There's a lot of homes being bought, a lot of homes being bought. There's a lot of homes being sold. It's really just lend itself to the fact that there's a lot of people getting in the industry now. Maybe they've been in real estate for 6 months. Maybe they've been in for a year. Maybe they've even just been in a couple of months. Okay. What we would call like part-time agent or inexperienced agents versus a full-time agent, which is somebody that this is all that they do. They are a real estate expert. They know the local market. They're involved in dozens of transactions every single month, both on the selling and buying side. And that really lends the experience, and really every single transaction in the real estate industry is going to be different. There's no two that are exactly the same. There's always challenges. There's always things that need to be overcome. And an agent with experience, and I'm talking about time that they've been doing real estate in your area. That's what experience is all about. And really the point is to say you want to be working with a full-time experienced agent versus your brother's, uncle's, cousin's friend that's been doing this for 6 months, 3 months, or maybe even less time than that you're trying to do a favor for. Can you talk, Dave, a little bit about why experience matters in real estate and what you should be looking for in a partner? Because really that's what it is a partner that you're going to be teaming up with to buy or sell your property.
Exactly. And that, it definitely, in my opinion, makes a big time difference. I have been doing real estate for 15 years. I can say that I've done both sides. I was a part-time agent for 10 years, and I've been a full-time agent for 5. What I used to like to say is I had such and such a job, and I do real estate on the side. Well, nobody wants an agent that's going to do real estate on the side. They want somebody that's dedicated to the business. And the reason that's going to benefit the buyer is you want to know what's out there. What's the inventory? What's the inventory out there? What's the market? What's the market like? What's going on? A full-time agent's going to answer their phone. So many times, if somebody's at a job and you need your agent, or you have an emergency, they have to call you back after 5 o'clock, and that does pose problems. By being in the business more, by basically being just involved, immersed into the business, it helps you with handling problems, handling situations, different tough negotiations once we get through the contract, inspection negotiations, different issues, things that arise that could even be during the loan process. And I could pick up the call, I can pick up the phone, Rob, we're having an issue with this. How could we help you, and how can you help us? So it makes a tremendous amount of difference.
I agree with you. And I think the communication piece is so important, because look, every single real estate deal, buying, selling, or refinancing your home, is going to have challenges that are going to come up. Anyone that thinks different or says different hasn't been doing this very long. And sometimes it can be a minor challenge, maybe an old discharge on a title search that needs to be found. Maybe it can be clarification on a deposit in a bank account. These are minor challenges that can be overcome. Other times it can be, large issues that can come up, maybe an inspection issue, maybe an appraisal issue, things where everybody has to get involved: the realtor, the buyer, the seller, the title company or attorney. And if you've got somebody on any side of any part of your real estate team that's not full-time in the business, it's not that it's not going to get done, because it will ultimately get done. But how much stress is going to be involved in that? How long are you going to have to wait to get a return call or email on a basic issue? with technology now, we're doing business by phone calls, text messages, emails, Skype, all these different things are involved. However you want to communicate, you can be accommodated, but everybody's got to be on the ball. Really what that means is an email, phone call, or text message is going to get returned, especially on something important, within a reasonable amount of time. I would say that's a couple business hours, maybe 1 or 2 hours. There's been times when, I'm getting messages, I'm getting calls right now while we're on this, and I'm able to tell people, hey, I got something going on till noontime. Or, I'll text them that, hey, I'll get back to you, I'm finishing a meeting. Absolutely fine. Everybody's busy. But to have to wait 6 hours or 24 hours or a couple of days for an answer because people don't know the answer, they're trying to get information, or they're just not getting back to you for any of those, it's like it creates additional stress for everyone. A home purchase is going to be a stressful process. Our job as professionals working with you on your wealth team here is to make sure that it's as least stressful as possible, that you have the least hurdles to get over, because we have that experience, that we know what's coming. We can try to get ahead of that on both the real estate side and the lending side. So I guess the exclamation point at the end of this is just to say experience matters. I'm not telling you not to do business with anyone if they haven't been in real estate for 10 years or 15 years like Dave and myself, but I am saying that if they lack that experience, they better be full-time. They better be on the ball with communication. They better have excellent reviews. They better have excellent ratings to make up for this. A lot of the time, a part-timer will have, maybe a mentor in their office. Maybe there'll be another realtor helping with the transaction. So there needs to be something to help offset the limited experience or the part-time. And if it's, hey, I've got Joe Smith who's been doing this 20 years in my office, he's my mentor, here's his phone number, here's his email, that's fine. I've had plenty of circumstances in the last few months where it's like a double agent team where one's mentoring the other, totally fine with that. But again, make sure that that's all set and expectations up front. So when your lender or other agent or title company or anyone in the transaction is having issues and we need to communicate, if we can't reach that agent, who else can we reach? Who's our plan B? Who can get involved if shit hits the fan? Who can get involved if things need to be solved and we need to find solutions? My experience overall is that it's easier to do a real estate transaction quickly than it is slowly. I think the quote that I've heard is time kills all deals. The longer a deal sits out there without the next step being taken, without a ramp, without a just moving forward in the process and milestones being hit, the more sellers get antsy, buyers can get cold feet, issues can come up, things have to be refreshed, a new pay stub, a new bank statement. Every one of these little pieces, ladies and gentlemen, is a new opportunity for a potential issue to come up. If we can do this quickly as a team and really put that teamwork together, it can make it so much less stressful, so much quicker from a time standpoint, and have the least amount of friction with underwriting and with everyone involved in the process. Do you have anything to add on that point, Dave?
That is an excellent point. Again, the buy side, the sales side, to your point, is an emotional process. It's a very, very emotional process. If you don't get answers back right away, that causes a delay, that gets the sellers nervous, that gets the buyers nervous. I could not say it any better. And I will say that as this business, there are going to be challenges in every deal, most every deal, 95%.
Mm-hmm.
So you need the right person the right team to guide you through, because if our jobs were that easy, everyone would be in our business.
Totally agree with you. And everyone wants to be in real estate. They hear that, hey, you can make good money, there's flexibility, but they don't see below the surface. Much like an iceberg, most of it is under the surface. And there's challenges every single day that need to be overcome. And the teamwork piece is absolutely crucial. Two heads are better than one. And there's been circumstances where it looks like a deal could fall apart, and then we collaborate with you know, the title company, the attorney, the buyer's agent, the listing agent, we all kind of come together as this team for you as the buyer, and we come up with a solution to that problem. You may not even know that this went on. That means we're doing our job. Okay. We want to make this easy for you. We want to make this stress-free. Moving, I don't care where you're moving or how far it is or what you're paying for the house. Put that aside. Moving anywhere is going to be a stressful process. Buying a house is going to be a stressful process from an emotional standpoint. So we know that, and we want to make the actual numbers part of it, the negotiation part of it, the mortgage part of it, as frictionless as possible, like I said. And that may require this back office teamwork, so to speak, where your advisors here on the mortgage side, the real estate side, the legal side, get together, we talk about the problems, we come up with solutions, and we implement the solutions, many times without you even needing to be involved as the buyer. Or by the time you find out about a problem, we've already found a solution. And we're here to say, hey, we found this, but we've already handled it. Here's our solution to it, and here's what that means to you. Okay, so you can tell working with this experienced team, regardless of who you choose, is important. I want to segue over to kind of doing a little bit of a recap on a case study. So me and Dave have worked together quite a few times, you know, over the years with multiple clients. And most recently, we just had a transaction close where Dave represented the buyer, and I also represented the buyer on their mortgage. A couple named Amy and Tom that we had worked with. And Amy came to me over a year ago to get pre-qualified and pre-approved. And just like we're talking about, getting with your mortgage advisor ahead of time. So we were able to get her credit score up, you know, over this period of time. She came back to me a few months ago and said, hey, Rob, we're really ready. We're back in the market. We're ready to move forward. And I wanted to talk about some different points because it's so fresh. It's right here in this, you know, COVID housing market, I think we can call it. So there's some points, some tips, some techniques I think that can be learned out of some of the things that came from this transaction. So I want to talk through a couple of these points and strategies that you used as representing Amy and Tom and how that really helped with the process. So the first thing was, I know that you had called the house that they were looking at, you had called the agent ahead of time to get the scoop, find out about other offers, find out how quickly they could get in there. And then they ended up getting in that house at 7:30 in the morning, which is very early for this. So can you talk about why that's so important and why that was part of your strategy with this specific property?
Well, it was great. I was glad to have a realtor on the other side that liked to get up early because I'm an early bird.
Yep.
I'm an early bird myself. So, you know, again, we've talked about what's going on in the market. It's a crazy busy market. It's a competitive market. And if you kind of sit there, you're gonna miss the boat. So again, what we did was we were able to arrange an early morning appointment, and there was already one offer that was in there. The property had only been in there for a couple of days. So let's tie in all those things that we talked about during this podcast. We talked about having a pre-approval, knowing what your numbers are, being able to close quickly, being able to, you know, again, knowing what you want. This happened. This was again the perfect storm, perfect case scenario. Amy and Tom knew exactly what they wanted, and what they did is they walked in the house. You could tell right away. We as realtors are not going to sell a house to you. You have to feel it. You have to feel it as the buyer. Our jobs come in after. They were very prepared because they had their pre-approval from you. We were able to move quickly on it. Again, having rapport with the realtor, asking if there's any offers, and that all helps. When you go further in the process, you want to again come up with the right amount. You know, so it's a trust thing between buyer, realtor, and mortgage person. So if we came in there in this competitive market and we came in $30,000-$40,000 under, or even 20,000, we wouldn't have had a chance. Amy and Tom trusted what I had to say. They trusted your ability to provide them with a mortgage, and we were able to put together an offer. I'm going to go into something a little funny that ended up sealing the deal with them. And this again, it's another little thing, but this works the letter. the letter that says, if when I say be genuine about that letter, but Amy and Tom had the best letter. They said they told the sellers a little bit about them, how much they loved the house. They even provided pictures and et cetera. So the seller got to know them a little bit better. Now, the funny part about this, and this was a unique situation, but it was a multiple bid situation. We went over, we discussed, we went over a little bit. And what ended up happening was the seller was so impressed with Amy and Tom and their story and how much his daughter reminded him of Amy, that they actually counter offered our offer, and they countered at full price. It wasn't about the money. It became a feel-good sale where everybody then was honorable through the inspection process, through the mortgage process, which I'm going to add was one of the smoothest mortgages I've ever seen. One of the things I like is your constant communication. Here's where we are in the process: appraisal reviewed, appraisal received, appraisal completed, et cetera, et cetera. All those things were able to make the seller relaxed, and it led to one of the best feel-good sales that I've done in my career.
And being able to close early is always a bonus. That's what we strive for. That's what we were able to deliver. So talking to a couple of those points, Amy got fully pre-approved. Like I said, she had come to me about a year ago, knew that there was a little bit of work that needed to be done on her side from a savings standpoint, from a credit standpoint. We identified what needed to be done, gave her a game plan. It did take her several months to pay down some debt and move some things around. And then her credit score was able to go up around 30 points between when we started the process and when we pulled her credit to actually move forward with the updated pre-approval. So that was really important. Number two was she provided all documents, pay stubs, W-2s, bank statements. Everything was provided that needed to be provided for her and Tom. So we were able to actually, get this full pre-approval letter, like Dave's saying, that gave the warm and fuzzy feeling to the seller. Because realize, if a seller is going to take you on as a buyer, they are putting aside everyone else. There needs to be a trust there. There needs to be a certainty that you're going to close this deal. It's not about what is the loan type, what is the interest rate, what are the fees, what are the closing costs. None of that is relevant to the seller. Okay, they want to know, am I going to close on time, and is there going to be a limited to no stress in my process? Okay, because they can get very stressed out when you're in the middle of a home sale and all of a sudden something big comes up and the prospect that they may have to put their house back on the market comes up. That's a seller's worst nightmare. That's what you want to avoid. And that's why doing the full pre-approval, I don't care who you're using for your mortgage, give them your documents. If they're not asking you for your documents, you got to question who you're working with. That's one of the most important things. With me, that's the first thing. Once I look at your credit, I'm asking for your documents. We need your documents to make sure that this is going to stand up in a multiple offer situation. The second thing is, or the next point that I want to make with this, even though it didn't happen in Amy and Tom's scenario, is in a very competitive situation, I've had listing agents call me and say, hey, I'm looking at multiple offers here. I have an offer from Joe Smith. You wrote the pre-approval for this offer. Can you talk to me a little about their qualifications? Well, if it's somebody that all they gave me was a credit report and I don't have anything on them, then it's not going to hold up. There's plenty of other offers there. But when I'm able to say, which every time, because the way I handle my pre-approvals, I'm able to say, oh yeah, I've been working with Joe Smith for the last 4 months plus. He's provided me his pay stubs. He has excellent credit. I've reviewed his employment history. He's got plenty of money available. I've reviewed his bank statements. He's a very strong buyer. That is a big piece of the puzzle where I've seen listing agents accept offers even a few $1,000s less than the best and highest, but at the same point, it's got the certainty. The lender that's attached has the reputation. They've gotten that warm, fuzzy feeling from talking to them. They know that they're fully pre-approved. It's not just a random, big box lender from halfway across the country that they may have not even had a conversation with and just filled something out online. So that really lends itself to what we were talking about earlier on getting that full pre-approval, not just a pre-qualification, especially right now in this market. And then the next point I wanted to talk to you about, Dave, is leaving room for negotiation. I know this is a little bit hard to discuss given the competitive nature of the environment, but we're not seeing a lot of seller concessions right now. Whereas a year or two ago, almost every deal had money back from the seller. Right now, at least in the initial offer, we're not typically seeing that. Where seller concessions can come up are after an appraisal or after an inspection is done, where there needs to be some sort of work done. That's where I'm seeing seller concessions, but they're not coming up as much up front. So if you want to get an offer accepted, can you talk about where that fits in, and then leaving the room for negotiation, knowing that you're probably going to have to come up a little bit on your price. So you don't want to put your max price from square one.
Correct. And that's a good point you make, Rob. In today's competitive market, if you can get away with paying your own closing costs, I 100% recommend that. It makes your offer look stronger. If you can't, then it's understandable. Sometimes you can make those things work. It does not put you, it doesn't put you at that same level of somebody else that can't afford their own closing costs. But it could still be done. And maybe in those particular cases, we say maybe half of your closing costs. So again, it continues with that communication, your loan program, et cetera, et cetera. And the tough thing with financing your closing costs, as you could speak to as a mortgage broker, is if you max your closing costs and you have a problem with inspections, you cannot get that credit if there was a problem with the house. And again, that's where it makes your offer not look as strong as the other person. So that's why in those particular instances, if maybe you need a $5,000 to help you out with closing costs, I would say that's better than financing all your closing costs. To your point with buying power, I agree with you. Say you're qualified for 250 and you're looking at a house that's 230, and maybe you make an initial bid around the asking price, assuming that your realtor's done the job, that the house is truly worth that. Now you get into a multiple bidding situation. Where you have to give your highest and best. So maybe at that particular time you can go 5,000-10,000 over, depending on again, with that communication, what your buyer feels, and that's going to give you an advantage. But you don't want to show your firsthand that, I can go up to 250 in that particular example that I gave. But
yeah. And this is where, going back to what we talked about earlier and having an experienced realtor, this is where the rubber meets the road. If Dave hadn't taken the step to call the other agent and set up that early showing, that would have made a difference. If they hadn't come to me and done that early pre-approval and had all the documents reviewed, that would have made a difference. So that's all really important. And then as far as the letter, they did the letter, but obviously you as their agent helped them, to create the letter, present the letter, all that. Others may have not done that. So I think it really comes full circle, talking about having an agent and a lender with experience and a good reputation, and then actually seeing it in action here. Had Dave not been their agent, I'm absolutely, seeing that they wouldn't have gotten the deal that they did. We don't even know if their offer would have gotten accepted. And then, the cherry on top is their home appraised for more than they were paying for it, which, that's everybody's best case, is when you're buying a house, you're buying it under market value. You can't beat that. And in this market, it's a godsend. That's what ended up happening. So just all the way around, it was really good. And it was all as a result of that early action, having the strategy in place, using these techniques that we're talking about, and having the experienced team to back you up. So I think the final real point that I want to discuss with everyone here is, everyone that's listening and watching this podcast and this video here online is wondering, hey, I'm a buyer, I'm looking to get a home here in the near future. What's the expectation? Just to bring everyone up to speed, the year started out pretty well in January, February. Then when March hit, sales fell off a cliff. People were not buying, people were not selling. Nobody knew what to expect due to COVID. Very, very quickly, the real estate industry adapted nationwide to the new normal here. I did a podcast several episodes ago with Lindsay Giadoso, And we talked about on that podcast about the new tools and technology that was being really brought out to help buyers and sellers purchase and sell their properties. And now here we are months later. The real estate market has absolutely rebounded with a V-shaped recovery and then some, where we're seeing properties probably around April, May, things really started getting back into the swing. We're in Connecticut, so a lot of people from other states like New York, said, hey, I want to get into the suburbs. I don't want to be in that densely populated city anymore. And they started buying up properties in droves all over Connecticut. It's really pushed up the values. And then people that were already here maybe wanted to get a bigger house. They wanted to do, have something that was more conducive for them to work from home or to have their kids learning from home. So you had all these people that were buying, selling, and refinancing all throughout the state of Connecticut, and it's lent itself to pushing prices up well above the pre-pandemic levels, which has been very, very good for home sellers. It's become a seller's market. So people have, from a buying standpoint, made moves, but there's also some that are scared. There's some that are worried that these prices are going up too quickly here. Is this legit? Am I going to be in a situation if I buy in the next few months where I'm going to buy a property for say $250 and it's only going to be worth $230 in a few years? So these are the fears that people are coming to me with as to why they're on the fence. Can we just talk about future expectations? Like, where do we see our local market here over the next 90 to 120 days? Let's call it the remainder of 2020. And then where do we see the market as we get into the winter of next, or the early part of next year? We round out the winter, then getting into the spring and summer buying season of 2021. What are your thoughts? What are you seeing?
Sure. And again, I think that's the proper time to talk about it. It's tough to talk about anything over a year, but I think in the near future, business continues to be very robust. It continues to be busy. It's a new way of life. It's a new way of life right now. Typically in the winters, you slow down a little bit, but don't forget, real estate never stops. Real estate never stops. It can sometimes slow down. I, as a realtor, am expecting this winter to be busier than any winter that I've known in the 15 years that I've been doing it. Just simply because, again, interest rates are so low. To your point, people are moving into Connecticut, especially people from New York. They're driving business up, and which is a good thing. It's a good thing for everybody. Over the next, say, 6 to 12 months, I'm thinking, nobody has a crystal ball, but I, as an agent, am thinking the market is going to continue right around the same level. Maybe it's not as busy, but I think prices will stay relatively the same because of those interest rates. And again, I think we're dealing with a new normal. I think right now, people that are leaving New York, you could work from home. You could work from home here. So I think that business is going to continue to increase, maybe on a lesser level, but I don't see it crashing. I see the New York market crashing because everybody's leaving it. But I would think in the next year or so, we're looking pretty good.
I totally agree with everything that Dave said, and I want to just give you guys some facts to back it up too. As I've talked about in some other lessons and podcasts, the Connecticut market, had peaked around 06, 07, maybe even 05, depending on the area. But, earlier in the decade, we've seen a lot of people that bought their homes at the top of the market, in those timelines. They've been underwater on what they paid versus, what the house is worth now for decades. There's especially some of the urban areas, Waterbury, Bridgeport, Hartford, some of those areas have really been hit hard by the housing crisis. While we've seen other areas of the country, especially on the West Coast and Midwest, they've come back from those levels. They've actually gone and surpassed the housing crisis or pre-crisis levels. Connecticut hadn't seen that, and it was really questionable when it would happen. What we saw is this was the year that it finally occurred. There have been people that I've been talking with about refinancing their homes or selling their homes for the last 24 to 36 months. And there was not an opportunity. They're still in the same mortgage that they got in 2005, 06, or 2007. they weren't able to ever get a new mortgage because, again, they weren't able to sell too because, they paid 150 and the house is only worth 130, and, they were trying to get back to at least a break even. Well, what I've seen in multiple times, and it's on my end as a lender, it's prevalent when you're refinancing because I can see what they paid, I can see how much they owe, and we can see what the house is worth now. I've had several clients just in the last 60 to 90 days whose property values have finally gone above what they paid for it pre-housing crisis. That's awesome. Some of them have gone up 5, 10, 15,000 more than they paid. A year ago, that wasn't the case. 2 years ago, that wasn't the case. They were underwater. Again, what they paid versus what it's worth now. This is now giving opportunity to people to sell their homes, not only refinance, but also sell their homes. And you as a buyer can be the one that is buying this home. You may be able to buy a home today in 2020 for the same price that it was in 2006. Where else in the country can you do that? It's a very, very unique market. It's a very affordable market. Especially for New England. There's not a lot of areas, states that you can get a decent house for a couple $100,000. Connecticut has those opportunities, especially on the starter homes, the condominiums. It's just phenomenal. You can't do that in other areas. So there's a great opportunity. Going back to what Dave said, I agree that the low interest rates are going to keep this housing market stable for the foreseeable future. The boost that we needed finally happened, and the interest rates help support that boost of housing prices. As long as these interest rates stay steadily in that, let's call it 3% to 4% on the very high end, as long as they stay in that range, these are historically low rates, this is going to continue on this path where it's going to be stable. I do think that there was some pent-up demand because obviously with COVID going on, you had a rush of people trying to get out of where they were and get into Connecticut. So I think there was a, overindulgence, so to speak, of people coming in and just trying to buy property. I think that is going to taper off a little bit, but it's still going to put us in a position where there's a good amount of buyers and sellers. The issue is the inventory. Okay, there's very, very limited inventory because selling your house during a pandemic is definitely something that is not ideal, okay? There's things that need to be taken from a precautionary standpoint that were not needing to be taken a year ago. And that's going to make it so there are some people that just prefer not to sell their home during the pandemic. That's less inventory. That's why we're doing this right now, is to give you the edge as a buyer on what you need to accomplish, whether you're looking to buy a home in the next 60 days or the next couple of years. It's really the same thing. Okay, it's just a matter of what is the inventory going to be? What is the competitive landscape going to be? If you take these tips, tricks, and techniques that we have provided to you today and implement them into your personal situation, doesn't matter what the market is, you're going to have an edge. You're going to have an advantage. Okay, and there's a big buying opportunity for you right now going into winter. The last point I want to make on that before I pass it back to you, Dave, for some closing remarks is the winter, the seasonality of a buying opportunity. My experience doing this almost for 2 decades now is that typically around the winter time, specifically when the snow starts coming, starts getting really cold, not as many people want to get out there into the market. They don't want to be lugging around, with ice and snow, open house to open house to open house. Me personally, and I've said this before, I've always bought my properties in the winter. It's simple economics, supply versus demand. If there's less buyers and the same amount of sellers, then there's going to be more opportunity for those buyers. Okay, so even if everything stays stable, like we're saying, if some of those buyers get out of the market because of the winter, okay, even if it's a small amount of them, that's going to give you more opportunity. So I don't think, like previous winters, that we're going to see sales fall off, that we're going to see prices go down significantly. I don't see any of that here. I see things staying steady, things staying stable, and you need to put your best foot forward from a competitive standpoint. Do you have anything to add to that, Dave?
You're exactly right. And one of the things that we would tell our sellers that are selling homes in the winter time is those clients, those buyers that happen to see your house in the winter, they're serious buyers. So maybe you do get a few less, but those that are willing to trek out in a snowstorm and go look at it, they're serious, they're ready to buy. and I think it's a good opportunity for buyers to pick up some good houses, and you might even have a little bit less pressure than what people are going through right now in this multiple bidding situation on several properties. So hang in there for those of you buyers that don't want to get into a multiple bidding situation, a bidding war. Wait a little bit for the winter. I still think it'll be busy, but it might be just a little bit more relaxed. But I agree with you. I think there will continue to be good activity in the winter.
Okay. So for those of you watching and listening to us today that are looking for a local real estate advisor, a local expert, as I'm sure you'd all agree from the insight that Dave's given today, Dave McDuff here with Westview Properties is among the best in the state when it comes to advising their buyers, sellers, and really just getting a transaction done. And I know Dave would agree, every single transaction we worked on has been among the smoothest that either of us have had. So I think, we can really attest to everyone's professionalism, reputation, and just a knack for getting things done quickly and properly. With that said, Dave, can you please give out your contact info? If any of our viewers and listeners want to get in touch, they want to get advised by you, they want your help with buying or selling a property, how can they get in touch?
Sure, and absolutely. Thank you very much for the kind words. I could be reached by my cell phone. My cell phone number is 203-228-1954. I please feel free to call me. I love talking to people. I understand this is it's a texting world too. I do work by text also if you need be, but obviously for everybody that's been listening to this podcast here, communication is key. I also could be reached at my email. It's D as in David, J as in James, McDuff, McDuff @comcast.net. I would love to speak to you about your buying needs. I'll be honest and outright, and I'll tell you everything that I see, your advantages, your disadvantages. We'll kind of have this whole communication that we just had earlier. But I look forward to hearing from anybody, even whether it's a question as simple as I'm looking for something in the spring market. What do you recommend? How do I get set up on automatic listings, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm here to help.
Thank you, Dave. And we really appreciate your time and expertise here today. To everyone watching and listening all over, thank you for your patronage here to our podcast. We hope you found value here today, and it's given you some good insight, real time, on what's going on in the market here as things progress almost on a daily basis. Again, we hope it helps. Take care, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.